Well, today I have the opportunity to give a sermon. I've addressed this concept back in 2004, and for those of you on the internet, when I travel around the country, you may have heard me talk about this before because this concept is one of my traveling sermons, one of my traveling concepts. But I chose it for this time of the year because I want it to be very encouraging to us. For those of you who are not here, there are handouts in the back if anyone wants a handout. But the title of the sermon is, Who's Looking Out for You? Who's looking out for you? Because while you're not going to learn anything new today, I want you to analyze your life, your circumstances, and I want you to understand who's really looking out for you. It could make a difference when things are going tough. Whatever your trials are, whatever your situations are, I think it's important for you to find out who's looking out for you. I want to begin the sermon by evaluating 7 institutions. 7 institutions, and see if these institutions are looking out for you. Now, on the handout, I have a list of the 7, and I have a list of where you can classify how well these institutions are doing for you. The lowest one is rarely. Is this institution looking out for you? Rarely, often, or is the institution very dependable? And so I want you to analyze it because you would come up with a different conclusion than I would. If you were taking the test, you would see it differently, and I think that's fine. But I'll even tell you what my scores are. But the entertainment media is number 1. Is the entertainment media looking out for you? Now, like every one of these, or not everyone, but most of these on the list, their bottom line is profit. They are trying to make money. That is their most important thing. Now, in the entertainment media, they also have an agenda. Some people have an agenda. Some people focus on history. Some people focus on gossip. Some people focus on sex. Some people focus on whatever they want to focus on. Some people want to push an agenda. Some want to push same-sex marriage. Some want to push whatever. Everyone has an agenda. It's very important to know what is the agenda. That's very important to know. So is the entertainment media looking out for you? Are they looking out for your children? You know, I look back and personally I don't think the entertainment media, in my opinion, the entertainment media was not looking out for my children as they were growing up. So for me, I would put rarely. You may put often. You may say it's very dependable. But I want you to analyze your life. Is the entertainment media looking out for you? For me, it's rarely. Because there are some good movies done by Kirk Cameron and others that I think that they make good Christian productions. I think that while Kirk wants to make money, don't get me wrong, he wants to make money, I think he's also trying to push an agenda that I would more agree with. Number 2, is the news media looking out for you? Again, the bottom line is profit. Everyone, conservative, liberal, they're trying to stay in business because, quite frankly, newspapers are going out of business. With this new technology, there's a lot more digital looking at news, looking at podcasts, etc. But to survive, they've got to make money. Plus, they have an agenda, and they have a slant or a bias. Every one of them has a slant or a bias, and it's important to know that person's slant or bias. And I will even tell you here today, whenever you hear me speak, or whenever you hear John Coffey speak, or whoever you hear speak, recognize my slant and my bias. Recognize every speaker's slant and bias. Understand that, and you don't have to agree with it. I'm not saying you have to accept it, but if you're listening to everyone, it can help you better gain from that person if you understand their slant or bias. Is the news media looking out for me? Again, I will say for me, rarely. I think most of them are concerned with their bias and their perspective, and that they may have principles, but it may not help me. The third one, is the legal system looking out for you? Well, I would definitely say rarely because I haven't had much need for the legal system. So I guess the only way I would look at the legal system helping me is who's on the Supreme Court and what cases could come to the Supreme Court. That could affect me. But I have an observation that the legal system benefits the rich, like O.J. Simpson. I also have an observation that too many judges have become activist judges. That's my opinion, but except if they make rulings, that affects me. But since I don't have much contact with the legal system, I don't know that they're looking out for me. So again, I would put rarely again for me. But you have to answer for you. Number 4, are business corporations looking out for you? Obviously, business corporations are trying to gain profit. They're trying to make their shareholders happy. They do provide jobs, and they do gouge the public, so you have the good and the bad there. For me, personally, I would put business corporations in the often rather than the rarely. Even though I know some of them are getting filthy rich and sometimes they don't treat their workers well, I get all that. But I am really glad for capitalism. I don't like crony capitalism, but I am glad for capitalism that provides jobs for, again, grocery stores, selling TVs, selling washers and dryers, washing windows, all those businesses, and many of those maybe I appreciate mom and pop stores more than the big corporations. I would say that's true. But I would say business corporations, while they're going to look after their dollar, again, we don't hide the fact. I would put, for me, I think business corporations often look out for me as they're also looking out for themselves. Number 5 is a religious hierarchy looking out for you. Now, religious hierarchy can have some good goals, but I would say rarely does a hierarchy look out for me, and almost never right now. But the thing about a hierarchy, they usually protect the clergy. I would say this, 40 years ago, I would say a hierarchy I was involved in, I would say often looked out for me 40 years ago. Because again, I was in the hierarchy, and so they took good care of me. But since I have not been in a hierarchy for 25 years, again, the weakness of a hierarchy is they protect the clergy. The case in point is the Roman Catholic hierarchy. They will protect their hierarchy, their priest, instead of taking care of little children. And again, churches sometimes will keep abusers in their system, but they'll transfer them somewhere. So I think that's where they get low marks. And a hierarchy will always protect their institution, almost always protect their institution. So again, for me, years ago I would have said often. Now in my life today, since I'm not involved in the hierarchy, I would say rarely. Number 6 is the American government looking out for you. And again, if you're from South Africa, or because we do usually have a person online from South Africa, I don't know who you are, but when Neil looks at the number of the person where you're from, we know what some of you in South Africa. Is it midnight down there right now, Neil, or something like that? So hello to you. Sometimes you're in from Germany and other places, Canada. And again, your government would be different. You would look at your government. But I specifically said to this audience here in the hall, is the American government looking out for you? I want to mention this nation was not built on socialism. So thereby the theory of this government is not to have the government taking care of us. And let me quickly say, too, that can change. That can change through the voters can change. Technically, we're a republic. We're not a democracy. We're a republic. But a lot of people don't know that because they don't. Today, a lot of schools don't teach about civics classes, which many of us older people had to take. And a lot of people don't remember how things operated. Let me give you an analogy about that. Years ago, when the Pilgrims came and met the Indians, of course, there was a lot of friction in some pockets of area. But there are some really good examples in history of an Indian chief and the leader of a Pilgrim faction getting along, shaking hands, making an agreement. And in history, there are periods of great peace among the American Indians and the Pilgrims. But here's what happened along the way. Sometimes the people who made the agreement died off, and the successor did not necessarily have the same ideas or necessarily honored the same agreement. And then new people came along later. Even how that worked in churches. About 25 years ago, this congregation, when we formed as an independent congregation, we went to a conference that was held in Indianapolis. And so those of us who went to Indianapolis, and were there 8 of us, Dixon, who went up there? About 8 of us went up to that conference, and we heard how a corporation was going to be formed. Well, it turned out that many of the things said in Indianapolis, just quick history, many of the things were not the way it turned out to be. And later people came into the church, those churches later had no idea about Indianapolis, had no interest in Indianapolis. In fact, they wanted to recreate what they came out of. So for me, what was said in Indianapolis is very, very important. And for many of us, it's very important. But those who came along later to a congregation, if you've come to this congregation in more recent times, what was said in Indianapolis only is an effect through osmosis to what we do. But you weren't there, and we don't really dwell on saying those same things over and over again. And so again, so today, this nation was not built on socialism. However, the population can choose to go that way. But please, let's be honest, if the population chooses to go that way, let's not muddle up the history of how this nation was formed. America was built upon self-reliance and individual initiative. I believe this nation's founders wanted little government interference in the lives of Americans because they were fleeing that from Europe. That's what they had in Europe. They got away. They wanted freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of whatever, away from the king, away from the monarchy. So again, the origin and the roots were to have more freedom and not to be socialistic. So again, if this nation chooses through the educational system and through the politicians, through voting, if this nation chooses to become more socialistic, I have to live with the reality of what's happening around me. But I really don't like when people ignore, at least be honest and say, this is how it was started, we want to change. That's many years ago, we want to change. We think it's better. And quite frankly, with this coronavirus, we'll have to see how it changes, because there may be changes made. You know, maybe what we'll see, I'm just saying maybe what this country needs is kind of like some Jubilee principles from the Bible. Now, if there's Jubilee principles from the Bible, that means people are forgiven a lot of debt. And just so you know that, how does that play on the average person? Well, the average person who's been responsible and has a good credit rating and has gotten a loan and has done those things, and the other one who's made mistakes and they had those mistakes eliminated, that can almost seem unfair. But again, that was a system that was in the Bible, and maybe that's what's going to be tried. I don't know. We're going to have to see what's going to happen here, but there'll be so much debt, there'll be so much financial problems that maybe they'll try some Jubilee principles. And maybe they'll be trying some socialistic principles by giving people handouts. We're going to have to see how that all plays out. But again, I'm just saying, I don't believe the government is to bail me out. I want you to understand these two phrases. The equality of opportunity and the equality of outcome. I believe the American way has been the equality of opportunity, not the equality of outcome. Now, let's be honest and let's be real here. Does everyone have equal opportunity? No. Through the years, have blacks have had equal opportunity as whites? No. And so there's a lot of things where it's not been equal. So let's be honest about that. But hopefully it's gotten better, and hopefully as it continues to get better, people will work to make it better. But I recommend we focus on the equality of opportunity, not the equality of outcome. And I do believe certain people can make certain decisions that will help, that they'll be able to benefit more. In theory, this is the land of opportunity. Even hasn't worked out for all of us, hasn't worked out really for any of us in a grand way. But again, in theory, people can become rich, people can be successful, and we'll see how it all plays out in the future. Number 7, so again, the American government, right now I would say rarely for me. I would say rarely. There are times I've said often, but I'm asking you, are they looking out for you? I'm wanting you to analyze it. I'm only sharing my ideas, so just to be honest and fair with you, to know my perspective. I'm not trying to tell you what you should think. You should think whatever you want to think. The last one is your family looking out for you, and this is the only one that I could put in the dependable category. Many of you cannot put your family in the dependable category. because some of you did not have parents who've looked after you. Some of you have not had brothers and sisters who've looked after you, looking out for you. Some of you have not had kids looking out for you. But I would say I'm very blessed in that regard, that I can say of those, that's the only one of those 7 that I could put in the dependable, because I've been able to have family looking out for me. Now, I've asked you to analyze that for yourself. Now, I want to spend the rest of the study in the Bible. Let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 15. I used that list to get you thinking about it. I wanted them to get you looking at yourself, looking at your life situation. Now, what does the Bible say? I want to show you 5 categories of you can look at who's supposed to help the poor. According to the Bible, who's supposed to help the poor? Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 7 through 11, the Bible says the first category I'd like to mention is the nation is supposed to look after the poor. The nation is supposed to look after the poor. So we can have an argument as how much welfare should there be? Should there be any welfare state? Well, again, I'm not saying the nation would be the government in a headquarters. I'm not saying like in a capital, that the nation can be done through churches. The nation can be done through individual citizens. But I do believe the nation has some responsibility to look after the poor. Deuteronomy 15, verses 7 through 11. If there is among you a poor man of your brethren within any of the gates in your land, which the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart nor shut your hand from your poor brother, but you shall open your hand wide to him and willingly lend him sufficient for his needs, whatever he needs. And again, I want to always focus, when you give to someone, you serve needs. You don't serve lust. In other words, if I'm going to help the poor, I don't want to give them a new boat. I don't have a new boat. I don't want to give them a new boat. Now, if they make it in a capitalistic state and make money and buy their own boat, God bless them. I don't care if they buy a boat. I'm just saying it's not my responsibility to help them get a new boat. But I do feel the Bible tells me I'm supposed to help people's needs. And so unfortunately, in our system today, people are not wanting their needs, served. People, when they go to the government, they want a cell phone. They want. One person said when different elections that the president's going to buy me a house. Again, those are different things that have been said. You can see them online, people making statements like that. But you serve the needs. You don't serve what everyone else thinks they should have. But it does say, beware lest there be a wicked thought in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release is at hand, and your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give him nothing, and he cry out to the Lord against you, and it become a sin among you. So again, God wants us to take care of poor people. I'm not going to go through other scriptures on this, because other scriptures in the Bible, I love their system. In the Old Testament, when it talked to the nation, it says when you're working in your field, which we don't do as much anymore, leave things for the poor. And in an agrarian society, you left food there for the poor, and the poor would go out and get food free, except they worked for it. They had to get out of their home, they had to walk to the place, they had maybe a ride in a vehicle, and they would pick up some of the food. They worked for it. Instead of just sitting in their chairs saying, give me, give me, give me, give me, give me. That's not the Bible way. The Bible way is help the poor, give them some food, but help them have their own self-respect, where they don't just take it for granted, but they'll actually go and get it. So again, we try to help the poor. Number 2 is the family. Let's look at 1 Timothy chapter 5. The family. The family God is designed for the family to take care of the poor. Let's look at 1 Timothy chapter 5. Let's look at a couple verses. We're going to look at the same verse in Timothy 5 for the next one, which is number 3. The second one is the family. So they're interspersed, but let's look at it here. 1 Timothy 5, verse 4. If any widow has children or grandchildren, let them first learn to show piety at home and to repay their parents, for this is good and acceptable before God. God wants family to take care of family. Verse 8. You've heard this verse quoted before. This is talking about family, though. If anyone does not provide for his own what? His own family. If anyone does not provide for his own family, especially those of his own household, he's denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So God wants people to take care of family. And so that's what we try to do. We can look down in verse 16. If any believing man or woman has widows, let them relieve them and do not let the church be burdened. In other words, it's best to allow the family to take care of the widows where possible. Now, the third one is I call believers. In other words, the believers also help the poor. And the believers could be a congregation, or the believers could be an individual. You can do it individually, or you can do it through a congregation. Staying in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 3, it says, honor widows who are really widows. The Moffat says, widows in need must be supported from the funds. Okay, so who takes care of the widows? You give the family the opportunity first. But if the family can't, and unfortunately if the family is unwilling, the church helps out. Look at verse 9. The Moffat says, no one under 60 is to be put on the church's list of widows. And verses 9 through 15 talks about a criteria of if you're going to give things to the widows, you would want to do it according to certain standards. And quite frankly, our congregation standards are not as strict as the biblical standards. And I'm not worried about that. In other words, I have helped people who are under 60. And someone says, you better make sure they're 60. Well, I understand the principle, but sometimes people under 60 have a need, and we need to help them out. And I'm hoping God will understand my decision and the decision of others. But we try to help out. We try to help out. So the third area is for believers. The fourth area I call friends. And these friends can be believers or non-believers. Believers or non-believers. Remember, I'm asking you, who's looking out for you? The nation's supposed to look out for me, and they do a decent job at times. My family's supposed to look out for me, and my family's very dependable. Believers are supposed to look out for me. Thankfully, I'm more in a position in my life right now that I can be more of the giver rather than the receiver. But I receive prayers from so many people, and if I were really in a rough way, I know there'd be people who would help me out. I know there are believers who are looking out for me. And just as you know, there are believers looking out for you. But number 4 is interesting because friends could be believers or non-believers. There are some people who claim to be believers in this world, part of the Church of God, who wouldn't look out for me and they wouldn't look out for you if their life depended on it. Yet I've got people not in the Church of God who look out for me. I like to tell a story about a friend of mine, an acquaintance of mine. He was going through a divorce years ago, and as he was going through a divorce years ago, I would sit and talk with him. I'd go to his house and talk to him. I think he came here to church one time. He's not part of the Church of God. In fact, he probably doesn't go to church very much anymore. And if he were to call me today, he would say, "How you doing, Pastor?" Because I'm his pastor. Well, he has been in tough man contests. He's tough. He's in this world. He's tough. He's crusty. He's mean. He's tough. He's never won a tough man contest. He usually comes in second. But he didn't care because to be in a tough man contest, you have to take a beating. He can take a beating. He can take it. It's a boom. He doesn't see. Many of us, if we were hit in the head, we'd stop. We'd melt. A tough fighter gets hit in the head, and they don't stop. They keep going. Well, this guy's told me. He says, "Pastor, if I'm around, no one's ever going to hurt you." Well, you know, I appreciate all of you pacifists praying for me. I really do. But if someone attacks me, I'm hoping he's close by. Because he's looking out for me. even though I don't even see him. In fact, I haven't seen him in probably years, 4 or 5 years now. But if he came waltzing through East Texas, he'd say, "Hey, Pastor." He'd probably come in the door, give me a hug and say, "I don't care about any virus." Give me a hug. He'd say, "Is anyone messing with you?" I say, "Garland, that guy over there, get him." Get Garland. But Garland's pretty tough, though. Garland can take a beating and still come after you. But this guy would beat you, Garland. He'd beat you. But you're pretty good. The point is, I appreciate every pacifist who prays for me. But I do appreciate, if this guy's around, he's looking out for me. He's looking out for me. And so I hope you consider this. He's not Church of God. I don't know how religious he is. I appreciate Church of God people who act like Christians. But, Church of God people who don't act like Christians, I just forgive them, for they know not what they do, and just appreciate. I'm going to tell you a little thing that might surprise you. Toward the end of my mother-in-law's life, we did put her in a nursing home. My wife took care of her father the whole time in the house, and then her mother, she took care of her most of the time in the house, but at the very end we put her in a nursing home. We would go to a nursing home, and when we go to the nursing home, my wife went every day. She knew all the people in the nursing home. She had a relationship with all the people in the nursing home. And we got to be close with some of the nurses. Two of the best nurses were lesbians. And while I don't support that lifestyle, if I were in a pickle, they would look out for me. And I take notice of that. And I appreciate that. I don't support their lifestyle. I don't teach their lifestyle. I don't preach at them because I don't have to. They know what I think. They don't try to preach their lifestyle on me, and I don't try to preach my lifestyle on them. But they would look out for me. Now, that would cause some believers problems. Because they'd say, well, if someone's looking out for me, they have to be a Sabbath keeper, or they have to go to church. Well, it's nice if people are Sabbath keepers. It's nice if people go to church. But I'm being realistic. I'm being in the real world here. Who's looking out for you? Because I got a lot of Sabbath-keeping acquaintances who would never look out for me. And that's okay. I'm not expecting them to. And I appreciate these two lesbian women who were looking after my mother-in-law, looking after my wife, and who would look after me. And I brought that up deliberately because I want you to think about it. I want you to ask yourself the question, who's looking out for you? You may not appreciate their lifestyle, you may not support their lifestyle, but you sure appreciate what they do for you. I'm not going to read the scriptures in that category due to time. Because on the handout there's scriptures about sometimes a friend loves at all times, sometimes a friend sticks closer than family, sometimes a close neighbor is better than distant family. Again, I already told you I've got great family. My brother's looking out for me. And then, even though I hardly see my sisters, they would look out for me too. Both of my sisters. I mean, sometimes they watch. They may be watching today, or they may watch this later on. We don't have a lot of contact because we live states away, but we talk through text, usually not through phone. And even then, and I've got some nephews and nieces. If I needed something, they would help me out. And I try to help them out. The last one is God. Your nation's supposed to help you. Your family's supposed to help you. Believers are supposed to help you, and you have friends that will help you. But the most important thing is God. Turn over to Romans chapter 8. When I've done this presentation about who's looking out for you, a lot of times I do it as an interactive discussion. I know I did this up in Lexington, Kentucky years ago when Jim O'Brien would ask me to do a lot of seminars, which I was happy to do for him. I enjoyed spending time with the brethren, and I would spend some of the time. And one of my subjects one year was, who's looking out for you? And we would go around the room for anyone who wanted to raise their hand. And I wanted them to tell me who's looking out for them. And I said, one thing you can't do, you can't mention me, because I didn't want them to think they had to make me happy. I said, no, you can't mention me, and you can't be negative. You got to say something that's positive, who's looking out for you. It was great to go around the room. Some people said their mom, some said their dad, some said their family, some said a teacher, some said a friend. And again, I never like to put pressure on people to answer. I don't like when preachers actually try to test the congregation, like, let's see how many of you know the answer. Many times I know the answer, I won't say it because it's almost like, don't put the congregation on the spot. And I don't like to put people on the spot that way. So I was going around them and I saw this kid about 14 or 15 years old. I was looking at the expression on his face. And I drew a conclusion. My conclusion was, he can't think of anybody who's looking out for him. So I quickly said, okay, we just want people who want to make an answer. If you want to make an answer, raise your hand. If you don't have to make an answer, because I did not want to put this kid on the spot. And he was already having a tough time because he literally could not think of anyone who was looking out for him, who's really a problem for him. See, because in Romans chapter 8, verse 17, we are children of God. Verse 16 says, the Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God. And if we're children, then we're heirs of God. Heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. And see, that reality should motivate you. That reality should comfort you. That reality should help you in times of trouble. That reality should help you in whatever you're facing in this life. Because you're an heir of God and you're a joint heir of Christ. Now, I could point to scriptures that talk about Jesus called us his friend. We're the friend of the Son of God. He's our friend. And I can point to scriptures that say, cast all your cares upon God, for he cares for you. I want you to think about who's looking out for you, to analyze that. I hope your nation is. I appreciate whatever they do, the little bit they do. I hope your family is. But if your biological family is not, some people have been adopted, some people have been officially taken in, some people have been unofficially taken in, and they've become your family. They'll look out for you. Believers, not all believers will look out for you, but recognize the ones who will really be there for you in times of trouble. Recognize your friends, the friends who are believers and the friends who are not believers. Recognize the people who would really be looking out for you. And I want to leave you with this. If every institution and if every person disappoints you, if every institution and every person fails you, know that your Heavenly Father is looking out for you.